he was just doing his job. But that morning in June 1996 changed everything for Ireland. A quiet road, a cash van, two detectives, and within minutes, one of the darkest moments in Garda history. So, who are the key players here? First up, Detective Jerry McCabe. 52 years old, born in Ballylongford, County Kerry. He's one of those old school guards, disciplined, respected, the kind of guy who shows up early, keeps his head down, and does the work nobody else wants to do. Married to Anne, father of 5 kids. The kind of dad who probably fixed your bike, grilled burgers in the rain, and told terrible dad jokes at the table. Yeah, that guy, salt of the earth. Then there's Detective Ben O'Sullivan, Jerry's partner that morning. Tough as nails with years of service under his belt. You could say he's the kind of man who's seen it all until that morning proved him wrong. He's loyal to Jerry, they've worked together for years. If you ever wanted a partner watching your back, you'd want Ben. Now let's talk about the other side, the robbery crew. A group linked to the provisional era made up of Pierce Macaulay, Michael O'Neill, Jeremiah Sheehy, and Kevin Walsh. And before you say, wait, weren't they supposed to be on Ceasefire? Yeah, exactly. That's what makes this whole thing explode politically. These weren't some random lads with masks and bad ideas. These were men tied to the movement that was supposedly laying down arms for peace, and yet they didn't get the memo. And finally, there's Anne McCabe, Jerry's wife. She's not just a grieving widow, she becomes the face of justice in Ireland. For decades, she'll fight for her husband's memory, take on politicians, and stand up to the people who try to spin this as just another incident. Spoiler alert, she never backs down. So yeah, ordinary people. But in this story, ordinary doesn't last very long. It's early morning, June 7th, 1996. The kind of Irish morning where the air feels half asleep, roads still quiet, and birds are the only ones awake. Detective Jerry McCabe and Detective Ben O'Sullivan are out doing something totally routine, escorting an unposted cash van. Nothing fancy, just making sure a van full of money gets from point A to point B without any drama. The route? Through Adare, County Limerick. You know that picturesque village that looks like it belongs on postcards, thatched cottages, calm streets, not exactly the kind of place where you'd expect automatic gunfire to echo. It's about 6:50 in the morning. The van stops. The detective's unmarked Ford Mondeo pulls in behind. Standard protocol. The sky's pale, soft. Everything feels boring, like another normal day on duty. But sometimes boring is just the calm before something really dark. And then without warning, the calm shatters. A Mitsubishi Pajero comes flying down the road and slams into the back of their car. No warning, no chance to react, just metal on metal out of nowhere. Before Jerry or Ben can even reach for their radios, 4 masked men jump out. They're armed with AK-47 rifles, the kind of weapon you don't bring unless you plan to do serious damage. They open fire, dozens of rounds, short bursts, cold, clinical. Jerry is hit several times. 3 of those bullets prove fatal. Ben O'Sullivan takes 11 hits, 11, but somehow he's still conscious. He's trying to move, trying to process what's happening, but everything's chaos. The cash van driver, frozen. No one can believe it, because this isn't a robbery, this is an ambush. And here's the twist, the attackers don't even take the money. They leave it behind, just gone, van untouched. That's the moment that turned a robbery gone wrong into something far more chilling. Because this wasn't just about cash, it was a message. Whether political, personal, or reckless, no one could tell right away. But the result was the same: one dead detective, another clinging to life, and an entire country suddenly reminded that peace can break faster than glass. Moments later, the gunmen jump back into a Mitsubishi Lancer and vanish. Quiet returns, but not the good kind. The kind that follows horror. Ben's bleeding, barely breathing. Jerry's not moving. The road that was silent a minute ago now feels like it's holding its breath. And here's the part that really gets you: this happened during the supposed era ceasefire. Yeah, the one that was meant to bring peace. So now Ireland's asking, if this is peace, what does war even look like? Within hours, Ireland is in shock. News bulletins break the story before breakfast: a guard shot dead in Limerick. It spreads fast. Radio, TV, newspapers, everyone's talking about it. Because this isn't Belfast or Derry, this is Adare, a quiet postcard village where people sell scones, not fire bullets. The first guards on scene find chaos, glass casings, silence. Jerry's gone, Ben's barely hanging on. And for a moment, no one really knows why. A robbery? Retaliation? A statement? All they know is that a man who kissed his wife goodbye an hour earlier isn't coming home. By midday, Ireland's leaders are on camera. The words disgust, horror, and betrayal flood the headlines. This was supposed to be after the violence. The ceasefire had just been holding Ireland together with tape and hope. And now it feels like someone just ripped that apart. Then comes the funeral. Tens of thousands, around 50,000 people pack into the streets of Limerick. Politicians, families, neighbors, guards from every county. The kind of turnout that tells you this wasn't just another crime, it was a national wound. Anne McCabe walks behind the coffin, head high, eyes hard. She doesn't crumble, she doesn't hide. She stands there and makes sure everyone remembers who Jerry was, not as a statistic, not as a victim, but as a husband, a father, a man who believed in serving his country even when it didn't protect him back. And then the political side kicks in. The Era Army Council puts out a statement denying involvement. Later, they admit, yeah, some of their members might have done it in contravention of orders. Basically, their way of saying, we didn't tell them to, but we're not sorry enough to fix it. People aren't buying it, not for a second. The country splits. Some say it was rogue actors, others say it was proof the era never really stopped. And somewhere in the middle sits Sinn Féin, trying to distance itself while still defending the men involved. They call it a tragedy, they talk about the peace process, but to most people, especially Anne, it sounds hollow. That's when Anne McCabe goes from being the widow to being the voice. She calls out hypocrisy. She stands up in front of crowds and politicians and says what half the country is thinking. My husband was killed for nothing and you're pretending it's part of the peace. That's what makes this part of the story sting, because it's not just the murder, it's how Ireland handles it. A country desperate for peace, trying to move forward even if it means stepping over justice to get there. So here's where the story goes from heartbreaking to straight up infuriating. The investigation moves fast. The guards lock down the area, question witnesses, chase leads. Within weeks, several men are arrested: Pierce McCauley, Michael O'Neill, Jeremiah Sheehy, and Kevin Walsh. Names that will stay glued to this case forever. Everyone's expecting murder charges. Because come on, automatic rifles, close range, a dead detective? That's not an accident. That's murder. But then, out of nowhere, the state drops a bombshell. They'll be charged with manslaughter instead. Wait, manslaughter? The country goes, what? Even people who never cared about politics before are suddenly experts in Irish law. Because how do you fire 30 bullets into 2 guards and call that manslaughter? The explanation? Politics. Always politics. See, 1996 is just before the Good Friday Agreement, when every political move is delicate. The government doesn't want to blow up the peace process. So, somewhere behind closed doors, a decision gets made. Take manslaughter, keep things quiet. No life sentences, no public war of words. Just sweep it under the carpet of national interest. The 4 men plead guilty. They get sentences ranging between 11 and 14 years. And because this is Ireland, where good behavior might as well mean showing up, they don't even serve the full stretch. Some are out in less than 10 years. You heard that right. The men who killed a guard in cold blood are back home before some people finish a college degree, living quietly, shopping in the same stores as the families they destroyed. And it doesn't stop there. Sinn Féin starts pushing for the men's early release under the Good Friday Agreement, the deal meant to free political prisoners. But here's the thing. Most people didn't see them as political. They saw them as murderers hiding behind a flag. Anne McCabe, she's livid. She takes it to the press, to politicians, to anyone who will listen. She says, "If this is peace, why does it feel like my husband's death is being erased?" It's raw, it's emotional, and it's powerful. Because for Anne, this isn't just about Jerry, it's about what justice even means in a country trying to move on from decades of violence. Then comes the next twist. Years later, Pierce Macaulay, one of the convicted men, makes headlines again for all the wrong reasons. He's charged with brutally attacking his partner in County Cavan. So yeah, not exactly the reformed citizen story the peace process promised. He is sentenced again, serves time, and later found dead at his home in Strabane, County Tyrone. A quiet death for a man whose actions screamed across the country. Meanwhile, Anne's still standing, still speaking, still reminding everyone that behind every deal and every agreement, there's a family that never got closure. And if you think the politics stopped there, or no, because every time Sinn Féin gained ground, every election, every debate, the McCabe case came roaring back, a ghost that refused to stay buried. It became more than just a crime story. It became a mirror showing Ireland how peace sometimes demands silence and how that silence can feel like betrayal. Let's slow this down for a second. Because behind all the politics, press conferences, and courtroom speeches, there's the part that never makes the front page, the people who have to live with the aftermath. Jerry McCabe wasn't just a name in a file. He was a husband, a father, and a man who'd probably give you directions if you looked lost in town. When he left for work that morning, he told Anne he'd be back for breakfast. He never made it home. Anne McCabe became the face of Irish grief, but also Irish grit. She wasn't a politician. She wasn't a media figure. Just a woman who refused to let her husband's death fade into the noise. Every time the government tried to move on, Anne showed up and made sure they remembered. She once said, "They say time heals, but not for me. He died for Ireland, but it was not his choice." That one sentence hit harder than any headline. Because she didn't want pity, she wanted honesty. Then there's Ben O'Sullivan, Jerry's partner. 11 gunshot wounds. 11. Doctors called it a miracle he even survived. But surviving isn't the same as living. He spent the rest of his life carrying those scars, physical and emotional. Even years later, when he'd speak about that morning, you could see it in his eyes. He was still there, still hearing the shots, still feeling every second of it. Ben passed away in 2022, and Ireland lost another piece of living history, another man who carried more than anyone should. His story wasn't about heroism, it was about endurance. And then there's their children, the McCabe kids who had to grow up with their father's name in every newspaper, every debate, every argument about peace. Imagine being a teenager and hearing strangers discuss whether your dad's death was worth it for the political process. That's not healing. That's reopening a wound every time someone turns on the radio. Across Ireland, people felt the shock. Ordinary folks, not politicians, gathered outside Garda stations with candles. Farmers, teachers, postmen, all standing quietly in the rain because, for once, the country agreed on something. This was wrong. This crossed a line. Even years later, when the story came up again, people didn't talk about it like history. They talked about it like a scar, the kind that doesn't fade, just hides under the surface. There are memorials now. Streets named after him. Ceremonies every June. Guards standing in uniform, saluting a man who should have retired and grown old with his wife. But every year, and still stands there too, same calm face, same unhealed pain. Because closure never really came. The men responsible are gone, released, or dead. The country moved on. But the McCabe family, they live with that morning every day. And that's the cruelest part of this story. You can sign peace treaties, shake hands, light candles, but for some people, the war never actually ends. Here's the part that keeps people awake at night. After all the chaos, the politics, the trials, you realize something unbelievable. They never stole the money. Not one coin. Not one bag. They came in with rifles, ambushed two guards, killed one, nearly killed the other, and left empty handed. It wasn't a robbery, it was a statement. But no one ever figured out what that statement actually was. Ireland had spent years clawing its way toward peace, ceasefires, negotiations, promises. The country wanted to believe the worst was behind it. Then this happened. Suddenly, everyone remembered how fragile peace really is, how one trigger pull can drag a whole nation backwards. The four men responsible pleaded guilty to manslaughter, served a few years, and walked out of prison to start new lives. No one really looked them in the eye after that, they just quietly faded back into society. Meanwhile, the McCabe family never got to fade from anything. They carried it forever. And then fate did its weird thing. Years later, Pierce Macaulay, the man who led the ambush, was found dead in his home in Strabane. No headlines, no cameras, no drama. Just silence. Almost poetic, except it doesn't bring anyone back. So what was really stolen that morning in Adare? Not cash, not gold, not valuables. It was trust. Trust in the ceasefire. Trust in justice. Trust that peace actually meant peace. And that's the part people still wrestle with today. Because the bullet stopped, but the damage never really healed. Ireland learned that peace without truth is just an agreement on paper. It doesn't fix what's broken. Jerry McCabe died protecting a van that didn't lose a single euro. But the country lost something much bigger, its illusion that the violence was truly over. So yeah, they tried to rob a van, but in the end they robbed a nation's faith in itself. And 29 years later, people still drive that same road in Adare, maybe slowing down for a second not because of the traffic, but because they know what happened there. A place once known for quiet beauty, forever marked by a few seconds of madness. And that's Ireland's cruel truth. Sometimes peace doesn't come with a bang. It comes with an echo that never stops.